The gallery was silent, except for the soft click of Claire Bennett's heels against the polished hardwood floors as she moved between the paintings, hanging on the pristine white walls. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden rectangles across the carefully curated collection of emerging artists she'd spent 3 months assembling for the spring exhibition. Each piece had been selected with meticulous care, each artist vetted not just for talent, but for the story their work told, the emotion it evoked, the way it would resonate with collectors who came to her gallery seeking something meaningful. Claire paused before an abstract piece, bold strokes of crimson and gold that seemed to pulse with barely contained energy, and adjusted its position by a fraction of an inch. Perfectionism wasn't just her nature, it was survival. In the cutthroat world of Boston art dealing, her gallery had carved out a reputation for excellence precisely because she refused to compromise her standards. No nepotism, no vanity pieces for wealthy patrons looking to hang their children's finger paintings beside legitimate artists. Only the best made it onto her walls. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Claire ignored it, stepping back to assess the overall flow of the exhibition. The opening was in 3 days, and everything needed to be perfect. Critics would be watching, collectors would be judging, and her gallery's future depended on maintaining the reputation she'd built over 5 grueling years of 18-hour days and countless rejections. The buzzing stopped, then immediately started again. Claire sighed and pulled out her phone, her irritation flaring when she saw her assistant's name. "Melissa, I told you I wasn't taking calls this afternoon." "I know, but there's a man here with his daughter." Melissa's voice carried a strange undercurrent, something between nervousness and warning. "He's asking to see you about a potential submission for the spring show." "The submission deadline was 3 months ago. You know that." "I told him. He said it would only take a moment of your time." A pause. "Claire, I think you should come out here." Something in Melissa's tone made Claire's instincts prickle. Her assistant had worked with her for 3 years and had developed a finely tuned sense for which visitors required attention and which could be politely dismissed. If Melissa thought Claire needed to handle this personally, there was a reason. "I'll be right there," Claire said, ending the call. She smoothed down her black blazer, armor in the form of Armani, and walked through the gallery's exhibition space toward the front reception area. The moment she stepped through the doorway, she understood Melissa's concern. The man standing in her gallery was not the typical parent hoping to showcase their child's artwork. He was tall, imposing, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and he carried himself with the kind of absolute confidence that suggested he was accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. 2 other men flanked him, their watchful postures and the suspicious bulges under their jackets marking them clearly as bodyguards. But it was the little girl holding his hand who captured Claire's attention. She was perhaps 8 years old, with dark curls pulled back in a neat ponytail and enormous brown eyes that watched Claire with an intensity unusual for a child. She wore a yellow dress with white sneakers, and she clutched a large portfolio against her chest like a shield. Despite the bodyguards and the obvious wealth radiating from her father, there was something vulnerable about her, something that made Claire's heart unexpectedly squeeze. "Ms. Bennett?" The man's voice was deep, carrying a faint accent Claire couldn't quite place. "Thank you for seeing us. I'm Marco Santoro, and this is my daughter, Isabella." Claire's mind raced through her mental catalog of Boston's wealthy elite. The Santoro name was familiar in the way that certain names were familiar, whispered about in exclusive circles, associated with construction and real estate, and other businesses that probably didn't bear close scrutiny. Old money mixed with new Italian heritage and rumored connections that made smart people ask no questions. "Mr. Santoro," Claire said, keeping her voice professionally neutral, "my assistant mentioned you wanted to discuss a submission, but I'm afraid our spring exhibition is fully curated, yes." His smile was polite, but didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you run an exceptional gallery, Ms. Bennett. Your reputation for selecting only the most talented artists is well known. Claire waited, sensing the other shoe about to drop. Isabella is an artist, Marco continued, his hand moving to rest on his daughter's shoulder with surprising gentleness. She wanted to submit a piece for your consideration. Oh no. Claire had handled this conversation a dozen times before. Wealthy parents convinced their children were prodigies, expecting their money to purchase wall space alongside legitimate artists. It never ended well, and she'd learned to shut it down quickly and firmly. Mr. Santoro, I appreciate that your daughter enjoys art, but this gallery features professional artists who've spent years developing their craft. Perhaps a children's art show would be more appropriate. May I show you? The small voice cut through Claire's prepared rejection. Isabella had stepped forward slightly, her chin lifted in a gesture that was pure determination, despite the nervousness visible in her trembling hands. Please, just one look? Claire's refusal died on her lips as she met the child's eyes. There was something in that gaze, a desperate hope mixed with steely resolve, that reminded Claire uncomfortably of herself at that age, clutching her own portfolio, begging gallery owners to just give her a chance. Isabella, Marco said, softly, a warning note in his voice, but his daughter ignored him. I know you think I'm just a kid, Isabella continued, her words tumbling out quickly as if she feared Claire would send them away before she could finish. But I've been painting since I was 4. My art teacher says I have real talent, that I understand color and composition better than students twice my age. I'm not asking you to put my painting in the exhibition. I just want you to look at it, to see it, to tell me honestly if it's any good. The raw vulnerability in those words hit Claire harder than she'd expected. She glanced at Marco, expecting to see a wealthy father indulging his daughter's whims, but what she saw instead was something more complex. Pride mixed with protectiveness, and beneath that, a bone-deep weariness that spoke of battles fought and lost. One look, Claire heard herself say, already regretting it. But I won't lie to you, Isabella. If it's not gallery quality, I'll tell you. Isabella's face lit up like sunrise, and she carefully unzipped her portfolio with trembling fingers. Marco stepped back slightly, his expression unreadable, while his bodyguards maintained their vigilant positions near the door. Claire braced herself for the inevitable, a child's enthusiastic but technically unsophisticated attempt at art that she'd have to gently critique while crushing a little girl's dreams. She'd done it before. It never got easier, but it was necessary. False encouragement helped no one. Isabella pulled out a canvas, carefully wrapped in protective paper, and began unwrapping it with a reverence that suggested this painting meant something significant to her. As the paper fell away, Claire prepared her kind but firm rejection. Then she saw the painting, and every prepared word evaporated from her mind. It was a portrait, a woman's face rendered in oils with a technical proficiency that shouldn't have been possible from an 8-year-old. But it wasn't the technique that made Claire's breath catch. It was the emotion. The woman in the painting was beautiful, her features classical and serene, but it was her eyes that dominated the composition. They held an ocean of sadness, a profound grief rendered with such raw honesty that Claire felt her throat tighten. The color palette was muted, soft grays and blues that seemed to embody loss itself. Except for a single bright yellow flower the woman held, its vibrant color almost painful against the subdued background. Claire stared at the painting, her professional assessment warring with unexpected emotional response. The technical skills were impressive for any artist, let alone a child. The brushwork was confident, the proportions accurate, the use of light and shadow sophisticated. But it was the emotional depth that truly stunned her. This wasn't a child's painting. This was the work of someone who understood heartbreak. It's my mama, Isabella said softly, and Claire heard the tremor in her voice. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. I painted it so I wouldn't forget her face, but also so other people could see how beautiful she was. How sad it is that she's gone. Claire felt something crack in her chest. She looked up at Marco and saw the raw pain flash across his face before he locked it down behind his controlled expression. This wasn't about a wealthy father indulging his daughter's hobby. This was about a grieving child trying to process loss through art, and a father doing everything in his power to support her. Isabella, Claire said carefully, this is remarkable. The technical skill is impressive, but what makes it truly special is the emotion you've captured. This is honest. It's real. Isabella's eyes filled with hope. Does that mean it can be in the exhibition? And there it was. The impossible question. Claire looked at the painting again, her mind racing through implications. The piece was legitimately good. Good enough that if an unknown adult artist had submitted it, she would have seriously considered it. But Isabella was 8 years old. Including a child's work in a professional exhibition could be seen as a gimmick, could undermine the gallery's credibility, could make critics dismiss the entire show as a vanity project. But refusing purely because of the artist's age, when the work itself was exhibition-worthy, went against everything Claire believed about art being judged on its own merits. I need to think about this, Claire said finally. The exhibition is meant to showcase emerging adult artists. Including a child's work, no matter how talented, would change the entire dynamic of the show. She saw disappointment flood Isabella's face, saw the little girl's shoulders slump as hope drained away. Marco's hand tightened on his daughter's shoulder, his expression darkening in a way that made Claire suddenly very aware of his bodyguards, of the power he represented, of how very foolish it might be to disappoint him. However, Claire continued, watching Isabella's head snap up, I would like to keep this for a few days, to consider it more carefully. Would that be acceptable? You mean it? Isabella whispered. I mean it. I'll give you my honest assessment by the end of the week. Claire looked directly at Marco. And to be clear, Mr. Santoro, my decision will be based solely on the artistic merit of the work. If I include it in the exhibition, it will be because I believe it deserves to be there, not for any other reason. If I don't include it, that decision is final and non-negotiable. She was drawing a line, making it clear that his money and influence wouldn't sway her judgment. It was probably stupid. Men like Marco Santoro weren't accustomed to having their will thwarted. But Claire's integrity was the only thing that truly belonged to her in this world, and she wouldn't compromise it for anyone. Marco studied her for a long moment, and Claire had the uncomfortable sensation of being assessed, catalogued, evaluated. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his severe features into something almost warm. I wouldn't want it any other way, Ms. Bennett, he said quietly. Isabella's work should be judged on its own merit. That's all we're asking for. He bent down to his daughter's level, cupping her face gently. Ms. Bennett will look at your painting carefully and make her decision. Whatever she decides, I'm proud of you for being brave enough to show your work. Isabella nodded, blinking back tears, and then did something that surprised Claire. She walked over and carefully wrote something on the back of the canvas in neat, childish handwriting before stepping back. That's my phone number, Isabella explained, so you can call me when you decide. I want to hear it from you, not just from Papa. The simple directness of it made Claire smile despite herself. I'll call you personally, she promised. After they left, Marco pausing at the door to hand Claire his card with a simple, in case you have questions, Claire stood in the empty reception area, staring at the painting that now rested on Melissa's desk. Well? Melissa asked quietly. What are you going to do? Claire didn't answer. She picked up the painting and carried it into her private office, propping it against the wall where she could see it while she worked. The woman in the portrait stared back at her, eyes full of sorrow and love, and Claire felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. For 3 days, Claire lived with Isabella's painting. She propped it in different locations throughout the gallery, studying how it interacted with various lighting conditions and spatial contexts. She photographed it and sent the images to 3 trusted colleagues, 2 curators at major museums, and an art critic whose opinion she valued, without revealing the artist's age, asking only for their honest assessment of the work's quality. Their responses were unanimous. The piece was exceptional. "Haunting," wrote the critic. "Technically accomplished with profound emotional resonance. Who is this artist?" The curators agreed, both expressing interest in seeing more work from whoever had created such a powerful portrait. Claire sat in her office late Thursday evening, the gallery closed and silent around her, and stared at Isabella's painting. Professional judgment told her the piece deserved to be in the exhibition. Every objective measure of artistic merit supported its inclusion, but the practical concerns gnawed at her. If she revealed the artist's age, critics might dismiss it as a publicity stunt. Collectors might question her judgment. Other artists in the exhibition might feel their work was being cheapened by association with a child's piece, regardless of its quality. But if she didn't reveal Isabella's age, she'd be fundamentally dishonest, and that deception would inevitably come out, potentially destroying her reputation far more thoroughly than any decision to include or exclude the painting. Claire's phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. Marco Santoro's name appeared on the screen. She answered cautiously. "Mr. Santoro." "Ms. Bennett, I apologize for calling after hours." His voice was measured, professional. "I wanted you to know that whatever decision you make, there will be no consequences. Isabella understands that her painting may not be right for your exhibition, and I won't take it personally if you decide not to include it." The offer should have been reassuring, but something in his tone suggested a deeper concern. "That's not why you called," Claire said. A pause. "No." Another pause, longer this time. "Isabella hasn't painted since her mother died, until 6 months ago. For 18 months, she wouldn't touch a brush, wouldn't even look at art supplies. I tried everything. Therapists, grief counselors, art teachers. Nothing worked." Claire listened, her chest tightening at the pain she heard beneath his controlled delivery. Then one day, she asked for paints. She locked herself in her room for 2 weeks and emerged with that portrait. Since then, she's been painting constantly. It's like something opened up in her, some way of processing what we lost. His voice roughened slightly. "I'm not asking you to include her work out of pity, Ms. Bennett. I'm telling you this so you understand what your consideration of her painting has already given her. Validation that her grief, her love for her mother, her attempt to hold on to those memories through art, that it all matters, that it's worthy of being seen." "Mr. Santoro, I should also tell you," he continued, "that Isabella has been researching your gallery obsessively for the past 3 days. She found an article from 5 years ago about how you opened this place after being rejected by every major gallery in Boston, how you mortgaged everything you owned to lease this space, how critics said you'd fail within a year. She's decided you're her hero, someone who believed in her own vision despite everyone telling her no." Claire closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle even heavier across her shoulders. That's a lot of pressure to put on a gallery owner you barely know. "I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm trying to help you understand that your decision matters beyond just whether one painting hangs in one exhibition. You have the power to tell an 8-year-old girl that her art, her grief, her love, her way of making sense of losing her mother is legitimate. Or you can tell her that she's not ready, not good enough, not appropriate for the adult world of serious art." "Those aren't the only 2 options," Claire protested. "Aren't they?" Marco asked quietly. "From where Isabella sits, they are. She's 8. She doesn't understand nuance or professional considerations or the politics of the art world. She understands that she poured her heart into a painting and that you're deciding whether it's good enough." After he hung up, Claire sat in the darkness of her office, anger and sympathy warring in her chest. Marco Santoro had just masterfully manipulated her, laying out exactly why saying no would make her the villain in an 8-year-old story. But he'd also trusted her with something deeply personal, had shown her the vulnerability beneath his powerful exterior. She thought about her own beginnings, about the gallery owners who'd dismissed her work because she was young, female, from the wrong background. She thought about the one curator who'd taken a chance on her, who'd looked past demographics to see the art itself. Claire made her decision. Friday morning, she called the number Isabella had written on the back of the canvas. The phone rang 3 times before a breathless voice answered. "Hello? Isabella? This is Claire Bennett. Did you decide?" The words tumbled out in a rush. "Is my painting good enough?" Claire took a breath. "Your painting is more than good enough, Isabella. It's exceptional. The technical skill is impressive, but what makes it truly special is the emotion you've captured. The love and loss and beauty all combined. It's honest art, and that's the hardest thing to achieve." She heard a sharp intake of breath, then silence. "Isabella?" "I'm here," the girl whispered. "I'm trying not to cry. Papa says crying is okay, but I don't want you to think I'm just a baby." "Tears don't make you a baby," Claire said gently. "They make you human, and they make you an artist, someone who feels deeply enough to translate emotion into visual form." "So, does that mean it can be in the exhibition?" "It means I want to include it," Claire said carefully. "But there's something we need to discuss. Including your work means people will know you're 8 years old. Some of them will be impressed. Others will be critical. They'll say you don't belong in a professional gallery, that you're too young, that I'm just trying to create controversy. It might be uncomfortable." "I don't care what people say," Isabella declared, with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Mama always told me that doing something important means some people won't understand. She said the only thing that matters is being true to yourself." Claire felt her throat tighten. "Your mother was very wise." "I know." A pause. "Ms. Bennett, can I come see where my painting will hang?" "How about tomorrow morning? You and your father can come to the gallery, and I'll show you exactly where it will be displayed." After ending the call, Claire sat at her desk and began drafting a statement for the exhibition catalog, an artist's note that would explain Isabella's work without making it seem like a gimmick. Then she called each of the other artists in the exhibition to explain her decision, giving them the option to withdraw if they felt uncomfortable being shown alongside a child's work. None of them withdrew. Several expressed curiosity about meeting Isabella. One artist, a photographer in her 60s, said, "If the work is good enough, the artist's age shouldn't matter. That's what we claim to believe, right? Let's prove it." Saturday morning, Claire watched from her office window as Marco's car pulled up outside the gallery. Isabella emerged first, practically bouncing with excitement, her father following with considerably more reserve. Claire noticed he came without his bodyguards this time, a gesture of trust that didn't go unnoticed. She met them at the door, and Isabella immediately grabbed her hand. "Where is it? Can I see?" Claire led them through the gallery to the far wall, where Isabella's painting now hung between 2 other portraits, one by an emerging artist from Rhode Island, another by a Boston-based painter Claire had been following for 2 years. The 3 pieces created a conversation about grief and memory, each approaching the theme from different angles. Isabella stood frozen, staring at her painting on the gallery wall. Her hand tightened in Claire's, and when Claire looked down, she saw tears streaming silently down the girl's face. "Sweetheart?" Marco crouched beside his daughter, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Isabella whispered. "It's just, Mama's on the wall. People will see her. They'll know she existed, that she was beautiful, that I loved her." She looked up at Claire with eyes too old for her face. "Thank you for letting me show her to everyone." Claire felt her own eyes sting and blinked rapidly. She thought she was making a decision about artistic merit and gallery standards, but Isabella had just shown her something deeper. This wasn't about the art world's validation. It was about a child's need to make her mother's existence visible, to ensure that her memory lived beyond the confines of their home. "Your mother would be very proud of you," Claire said, her voice rough with emotion. Marco stood, and Claire was startled to see his eyes were wet. "Thank you," he said simply, but the words carried the weight of everything he couldn't say in front of his daughter. Isabella spent the next hour examining every other painting in the exhibition, asking questions about technique and composition with a focus that suggested genuine interest rather than childhood politeness. Claire found herself enjoying the conversation, appreciating how Isabella noticed details that many adult visitors would miss. As they were preparing to leave, Isabella turned back to Claire. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Papa said you started your gallery, even though people told you it wouldn't work. How did you know you were right and they were wrong?" Claire considered the question carefully. "I didn't know," she admitted. "I was terrified I was making a mistake, but I believed that the art I wanted to show deserved a space, and I was willing to risk failure to create that space. Sometimes believing in something is more important than being certain." Isabella nodded seriously. "That's what Papa says about me, that he believes in me even when I don't believe in myself." She glanced up at her father, and Claire saw the deep bond between them, the way they'd held each other together through grief. After they left, Claire stood in the empty gallery, looking at Isabella's painting. In 3 days, the exhibition would open. Critics would come, collectors would browse, and an 8-year-old girl's portrait of her dead mother would hang on the wall alongside professional artists' work. Claire had no idea how it would be received, but she knew, with absolute certainty, that she'd made the right decision. The exhibition opening was scheduled for Friday evening at 7. By 6:30, Claire was questioning every decision she'd ever made. The gallery was packed, far more crowded than her usual openings. Word had spread about the 8-year-old artist, and Claire wasn't sure if that was drawing genuine art lovers or curiosity seekers looking for a spectacle. Critics from 3 major publications had confirmed attendance, along with collectors whose purchases could make or break emerging artists' careers. Melissa appeared at her elbow. "The Santoros just arrived. Isabella looks terrified." Claire pushed through the crowd to find Marco and Isabella near the entrance. Isabella was dressed in a navy dress, her curls perfectly arranged, but her face was pale and her hand clenched her father's with white-knuckled intensity. "Hey!" Claire crouched to Isabella's eye level. "You okay?" "There are so many people," Isabella whispered. "What if they hate it? What if they think I'm stupid for thinking I could be in a real gallery?" "Then they're wrong," Claire said firmly. "Your painting earned its place here based on merit, not age. You understand grief and beauty in ways that many adult artists never achieve. That's not stupid, that's remarkable. But I'm scared." "Being scared doesn't mean you're doing something wrong," Claire told her. "It usually means you're doing something important. Fear is just how we know we care about the outcome." Isabella took a shaky breath, then nodded. "Okay. Can I see my painting?" Claire led them through the crowd, acutely aware of the glances they were drawing. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly judgmental. She heard whispered comments as they passed. "That's the child. She's so young. I heard Bennett's just doing this for publicity." "It's a gimmick. Real artists should be furious." Claire felt Marco tense beside her, saw his jaw tighten, but he said nothing. Isabella seemed oblivious, her focus entirely on reaching her painting. They arrived at the wall where the portrait hung, and Claire watched Isabella's face transform. The fear melted away, replaced by quiet pride. She stood studying her work, as if seeing it for the first time, taking in how the gallery lighting emphasized certain aspects, how it interacted with the surrounding pieces. "It looks different here," Isabella said softly. "More real somehow." "That's because it's being seen," Marco said, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Art doesn't truly exist until someone else experiences it." Claire excused herself to handle hostess duties, but kept an eye on the Santoros. She watched as visitors began gathering around Isabella's painting, studying it with increasing interest. She couldn't hear the conversations, but she could see the reactions, initially skeptical expressions giving way to genuine engagement with the work. An hour into the opening, Richard Chen, the most influential art critic in Boston, appeared at Claire's elbow. "Ms. Bennett, I need to know about the portrait on the east wall. The woman with the yellow flower. Who's the artist?" Claire's pulse quickened. Chen could make or destroy an artist's career with a single review. "Her name is Isabella Santoro." "And where has she shown before? I don't recognize the name." "This is her first professional exhibition." Claire paused, then committed fully to transparency. "She's 8 years old." Chen's eyebrows rose. 8. He looked back at the painting, then at Claire. "You're serious?" "Completely. The piece was submitted for consideration. I evaluated it based solely on artistic merit, and I decided it was exhibition-worthy. I informed the other artists of my decision to include a child's work, and none withdrew. If you have concerns about my judgment—" "Concerns?" Chen interrupted. "Ms. Bennett, that painting is one of the most emotionally authentic pieces in this entire exhibition. The technical skill is impressive for any artist, let alone a child, but what struck me was the absolute honesty of it. There's no artifice, no pretension, just raw grief and love translated into visual form." He paused. "I want to interview her, and you. This is exactly the kind of story that makes people reconsider their assumptions about art." Relief flooded through Claire. "I'll introduce you, but please be gentle. She's nervous." She led Chen to where Isabella stood with her father, still studying her painting. "Isabella, there's someone I'd like you to meet." Over the next hour, Claire watched Isabella talk to Richard Chen with surprising poise, explaining her artistic process, her relationship with her mother, her decision to paint the portrait. Marco stood nearby, protective but allowing his daughter to speak for herself. Chen listened with focused attention, occasionally jotting notes, his expression thoughtful. Other critics and collectors began gravitating toward Isabella, drawn by Chen's interest. Claire intercepted when needed, ensuring Isabella wasn't overwhelmed, but the girl handled the attention better than many adult artists Claire had worked with. She was honest about her limitations, clear about her intentions, and unafraid to say, "I don't know," when asked about artistic influences she hadn't studied yet. "She's remarkable, God," voice said beside Claire, and she turned to find Elena Rodriguez, a prominent collector known for supporting emerging artists. Not just the painting, though that's genuinely impressive, but her presence. She's so grounded, so clear about what she's trying to express. "Her father deserves credit for that," Claire said, watching Marco deflect a particularly aggressive questioner who was pushing too hard about Isabella's age. "He supported her art without pushing her, protected her while letting her be vulnerable." Elna studied Marco with interest. "Santoro? That name is familiar. Isn't he—" "Yes," Claire cut her off gently. Whatever Marco's business was, it wasn't relevant to tonight. But right now, he's just a father supporting his daughter's passion. As the evening wore on, Claire noticed a shift in the crowd's energy. Initial skepticism had given way to genuine appreciation. She overheard multiple conversations praising not just Isabella's painting, but the entire exhibition. Several people commented that the child's unflinching honesty about grief made them look at the other works differently, with fresh eyes. Near the end of the evening, Claire found herself standing beside Marco, both watching Isabella explain her technique to a group of interested visitors. "You took a risk including her work," Marco said quietly. "Thank you for that." "The risk paid off," Claire replied. "Chen's going to write about her. Others will follow. Your daughter may have just launched a very unusual career." "I don't care about her career," Marco said, surprising her. "I care that she's found a way to heal, To take something unbearable and transform it into something beautiful. He paused. Her mother believed art was about truth, about showing people what you really feel, not what they want to see. Isabella learned that from her, even if she doesn't fully realize it yet. Claire glanced at him, seeing the grief that still lived in his eyes, the loss that time had softened but not erased. You've done a good job with her. She's talented, yes, but more importantly, she's grounded. She knows who she is. That's all her, Marco said softly. I just try not to get in her way. The crowd began thinning around 10. Isabella was visibly exhausted, her earlier energy depleted, leaning against her father's side while they said goodbyes. Claire walked them to the door, surprised by how much she'd missed their presence. Ms. Bennett? Isabella looked up at her with heavy-lidded eyes. Thank you for believing my painting was good enough. Tonight was the best night of my whole life. Claire crouched down, ignoring her protesting knees and the expensive dress that definitely wasn't designed for this position. You're very welcome, Isabella, and I hope you keep painting, not because you think you have to prove something, but because you love it. I will, Isabella promised. Then, impulsively, she threw her arms around Claire's neck in a fierce hug. Claire froze. For a moment, physical affection from clients wasn't something she typically navigated. But then she found herself hugging back, this small, fierce, talented child who'd somehow become important to her over the course of a week. When Isabella pulled back, Marco was watching them with an expression Claire couldn't quite read. We should let you get back to your guests, he said. Actually, Claire found herself saying, the guests can handle themselves for a few minutes. Walk with me? She led them back through the gallery one final time, pointing out pieces Isabella might not have examined closely, sharing stories about the artists, explaining why she'd chosen to arrange the exhibition the way she had. Isabella listened with rapt attention, despite her exhaustion, asking insightful questions that made Claire reconsider aspects of her own curatorial choices. At the door, Marco handed her an envelope. For you, he said simply. Mr. Santoro, I don't need— It's not payment, he interrupted gently. It's an invitation. Isabella is planning a small showing of her other paintings next month, just for friends and family at our home. We'd like you to come, not as a gallery owner, just as someone who gave a little girl a chance when you didn't have to. Claire opened the envelope to find a handwritten invitation on heavy cardstock, the address in an exclusive neighborhood she'd never had reason to visit. I'd be honored, she said honestly. After they left, Claire returned to the remaining guests, but her mind kept drifting to Isabella's painting on the wall, to the little girl's fierce determination, to Marco's quiet pride in his daughter. She'd thought she was making a simple curatorial decision, but somehow she'd become entangled in their story, invested in their healing. Melissa appeared with a glass of wine. Richard Chen just posted his initial thoughts on social media. You should see this. Claire took the phone and read. At Claire Bennett's spring exhibition, the most profound piece comes from an 8-year-old artist painting her grief. Isabella Santoro's portrait of her late mother is a masterclass in emotional honesty, proof that technical skill serves the art, not the other way around. Bennett's decision to include this work based on merit, rather than demographics, reminds us why we fell in love with art in the first place. Full review Monday. Claire handed back the phone, feeling the knot of anxiety she'd been carrying for days finally unwind. Tomorrow would bring more reviews, more reactions, more attention. But tonight, she'd done exactly what she'd set out to do. Created a space where honest art could be seen, regardless of who created it. She walked back to Isabella's painting one final time, studying the woman's sad eyes and the bright yellow flower, and thought about courage. The courage to make art that revealed your deepest pain, the courage to show that art to the world, and the courage to risk your professional reputation, on the belief that good art deserved recognition regardless of the artist's age. Claire raised her wineglass in a silent toast to the portrait. To Isabella, to taking chances that mattered. Then she turned back to her guests and the exhibition she'd built, feeling more certain than she had in years that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do.